So for me, belief is a huge part of how teams play, right? Like, if I was to deconstruct what Liverpool's identity has been over the last few years, one of the first words I would use is belief. Because, well, it seems fairly obvious, but the manager previous mentioned it quite a lot. And mentioned it in his first press conference. And it was mentioned in pretty much every article. And it mentioned any time that Liverpool ever had a waiver. And it was mentioned, well, almost constantly. But it doesn't really mean that when he leaves, that becomes less of a factor. That was just his focus during that time. And I think you could see that a lot during the Nottingham Forest game. Forest clearly believed that they could get a result out of it. And Liverpool clearly believed that there was a team, a bogey team of sorts, though actually really a bogey manager and some tactics that they played, which could undermine the Liverpool system. Players know when managers aren't necessarily confident in the way that the game is going to be played, or feel as if there is going to be some way of undermining this side. And that's fair enough. Like, you're never going to be able to 100% face every team. There's always a tactic to out-tactic a tactic. Even the best sides in the world lose at some point. They get undermined, their confidence can go, their confidence in even the most minuscule thing can change. And I think that's a huge part of the way that Liverpool are currently reconstructing this side, right? If I was to reconstruct this side, I would have done it very differently. But I didn't have the insight that Arne Slot, that Michael Edwards, that Richard Hughes currently have. And so all of these assumptions that we've been operating on for ages, all of these ideas that somehow we know better than the manager, that, you know, even though Nunes was obviously, he was out for this game because of his suspension, even though we think that we know better in terms of the tactical lineup, that Diaz shouldn't be playing through the centre for some people, there are reasons why the manager does that. And I also think that there are probably bigger reasons than just the immediate game. As much as people say, and they very often go on about this idea of like, well, we take it game by game. Seasons are managed, and seasons are managed at such a high level in football, especially in the Premier League. I don't ever really think that it's easy to see it's hard to see the big picture, especially in football, when basically every state feels permanent apart from when you're ahead. And what's weird about it is, even when we were ahead earlier in the season, that felt relatively permanent. That felt like, oh, we're ahead. Like, we're actually going to win this game because we were so confident in the side at that time. Because we had reasons not to be confident. We didn't really have reasons not to be confident in this new system, in this new idea of what we were doing. And it worked really well. Then Forest undermined that. That was like, they were one of the only teams that people really questioned us against. And you could see it kind of irked Arne Slot. It put him in a position where he felt that maybe he'd let the team down, the team had let him down. There was a bit of 50-50 there. A manager had found a way to undermine a system that a manager like him knew was quite, not, I don't want to say crass, but quite obvious. He knew that the system wasn't as good as people were giving it credit for. And he knew that someone in the shape of the Nottingham Forest manager would be able to undermine that. And so I guess his fear after that was that we would constantly have other people picking that apart. But not everyone has the tools that Nottingham Forest has. And that feels weird to say because it's not as if at the start of the season everyone was saying, oh, Forest are definitely going to be in the top 4 and they're definitely going to be in the top 2 at this point in the season. Like, if anything, I actually feel like a lot of people that had them pinned on for that middle of the table, possibly just getting above relegation type battle because they didn't know a lot about a lot of these people. Even their goalkeeper last night in Kels was 5 million from another side. He pulled out an absolutely incredible performance. But the flip side of that is, of course, we took a bunch of shots which we felt like we were forcing at times. There are other games where I think that actually we completely undermined their confidence, and that was the opposite of it, right? I don't know if they believed that they were going to concede to us. I don't know if they believed that they were even going to look vulnerable at any point. But the second that we scored and we countered whatever their belief was, they almost completely collapsed. Their game plan went out the window. The back three that Nuno normally brings on became not non-existent, but it certainly became a bit of a delayed thought. And we suddenly looked way more dominant than we did before. But here's the thing. It all circles back to the belief. We know in games that the system that Arne Slot plays slowly constricts around the opposition, slowly works it out, comes out different in the second half, morphs a little bit. We're trying to judge or work out where Arne Slot's going, but we're doing that based on what we know about Liverpool, not what we know about Nottingham Forest, not what we know about Manchester United, not what we know about any of these sides, who will be going out there with their own game plan. It gets a little bit meta, is what I'm saying. We could say, and I think it's probably an old school idea of football at this point, but we could definitely say, well, if we start our strongest 11, there's almost no way that we can't beat another team in the league. That's probably true. We do have a very good squad. We do have a very good team at the moment. But I also don't think that that's going to win us. It's not going to get us a title. It's these nuanced, detailed aspects of playing the game where it's like, right, we actually have to understand Diaz's position as fans, because with Núñez in the form and the transitional phase that he's currently in, I don't think we're going to be getting the best out of him. With contract situations being weak, I think we are undermining the overall stability of what is going on at Liverpool. With a midfield that I think a lot of people probably think would remain for a while, I actually think Slot knows what the next iteration of that midfield is. There are a lot of changeable aspects, I want to say, that I feel like at the moment we aren't really acknowledging, because we think, well, Klopp put this team together, Slot picked it up, and that's kind of the end of it. Núñez is not a suitable striker for this system. And I was saying this in a couple of Liverpool groups last night. I feel like we need someone who is extremely consistent up front. It can't be someone who comes in and is injured regularly. It can't be someone who comes in and is getting yellow cards but isn't scoring us goals. If they are getting yellow cards, then they have to be worth the risk on the other side. The high risk, high reward idea of a striker is, well, if you're going to press with him, say a Bobby Firmino or a Mane or someone like that, Mane picked up yellow cards regularly because of the way that Liverpool pressed, but you were willing to take that risk because, well, it was a high reward system. At the moment, because it's not even like a risk-averse way that Arne Slot plays, it's just because of the more controlling way that we play, we don't necessarily have to be as risky. And I think that maybe at times it means that our conclusion is we should constantly be dominating games, we should constantly be on the front foot, and that's just not a realistic game state. Though I've got to admit, for a majority of last night's game against Forest, Liverpool were on top. 71% possession, almost 2 goals in XG. I think that's probably gone up this morning if I haven't already checked the stats. Double the amount of goalkeeper saves that they have to make, double the amount of shots overall, double the amount of 5 times the amount of big chances. But maybe that's the final thing that we're not acknowledging here. At the moment, I don't think the belief in the defence or from the defence is currently there. Some people are saying that Alisson maybe should have saved that last night. I can understand the argument, but at the same time, Chris Woods put it exactly where a goalkeeper would not want it. And to get down that quick would be very difficult. I also don't think he was probably expecting it to be that good of a shot from that angle, even though Chris Wood is probably one of the form strikers in the Premier League at the moment. I think we've come to think that Liverpool should leave every game with a clean sheet and be winning 2-0, which is pretty much what we started the season on our way towards doing. At this critical point in the season, at the point where contracts are being negotiated, players are beginning to bed into the system properly. The system is beginning to evolve. We need to kick on to the next stage of the system. Other managers have worked that out. Nuno worked that out, and I think Slot knew that. To an extent, Amorim have worked that out, though the back three very much works that out itself. All of these different little factors mean that Liverpool need to be able to kick on to the next stage. And historically, that was kind of an issue for Liverpool in the past, especially during the main season, right? During the middle part here, the real crux of it. We had managers that began to work us out, and the belief, weirdly, from the team in our system began to wane, and therefore, it wasn't even application, it was just okay, well, they are going to score. Okay, well, it is a bit of an uphill battle. I don't want to repeat those same issues that we've had in the past, even though Slot talks about the similarities between him and Klopp. That doesn't mean the season is going to play out in the same way. And in fact, what I want to lean into is a lot of the positives here. Yes, we came back last night to a 1-1 draw. Yes, we should have probably won the game. I think Jamie Carragher's right. I think a lot of people are right, we should have won the game. I think with a clinical striker or someone that's a little bit more dangerous through the middle, someone who is more of a false nine that they can then crash the box, we look a lot more dangerous. We're taking a lot more of the weight off Mo Salah's shoulders. We're, not relying so much on Cody Gakpo to have to cut in and do what it is that he's doing. We're not relying on a set piece. Though last night, I've got to admit, our set pieces looked extremely dangerous when Tsimikas came on and the second balls were looking very impressive. There's a bunch of positives that I think Liverpool can take from this. They now go away to Brentford, who just drew 2-2 against City. So it's not as if Brentford are completely undangerous right now. But what they certainly have is a strike force that are going to go in between Liverpool's lines. Preview on that later in the week. I'm just a bit concerned about the air around the supporters at the moment. There's a little bit of infighting, a little bit of backbiting, a little bit of, it's all going wrong kind of thing. And actually, you just got to firm it sometimes. Don't you? I don't know. Let me know what your approach is in the comments below. I'll be on the channel later in the day. I just thought maybe it's a bit too philosophical for some people, but I don't think it's as bad as people are painting. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and I'll see you in a while. Much love. Bye.